Girls, welcome back to my channel. It's Chelsea, where we talk about all things glam and all things girly. I'm a beauty enthusiast and consultant who loves to talk about everything dealing with beauty and makeup, and today we got a little eyeshadow to talk about. Yes, the new Patrick Ta Major Dimensions 2 Rose eyeshadow palette. So I will be showing you how I am created both of these eye looks that you see here, sharing with you my thoughts about the palette, if it's worth your buy, and a few comparisons here or there. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I truly do appreciate it, and let's get right into this video. Okay, so first, I got to get this hair out the way. I think she is so cute. What do y'all think? It is a half wig from Amazon. It was around $27. This is my first time I have ever worn a wig. So if you feel like I need some suggestions, leave them in the comment section. I'll also link the wig in the D box if you are interested in looking into it. I had to discuss the elephant in the room because it is the elephant on me that's in the room. Okay, on to what you're really here about. So here is a closer look at the new Patrick Ta Major Dimensions 2 Rose palette. First of all, you know, I'm not really one to give you all the descriptions about packaging, but I have to point this out. I love how they did the packaging. So this is mirrored here, but do you see that outlining of this light pink here? I love it. It's like, I don't know, it feels very smooth, almost like plastic, but it's not plastic. I can't really describe what it is, but I love it because if I am looking at the regular or the original Major Dimensions palette, it doesn't have that, so I can quickly tell the difference between the two. Thank you, because I love when brands have similar packaging, but I also don't like it when the packaging is the same and then you're like, what palette is what? So I think this just little trim here makes it so easy to figure out which palette is before I even open it. I love it. So this palette does retail for $68 like his original palette does, and it is going to come with formulations of cream, matte, and shimmer. And so he says that this is a daily wardrobe of rose tone neutral shades that will become your daily go-to palette. It is a mix of warm, cool, and neutral matte, satin, and pearlescent shades with 2 cream bases that create the perfect rich canvas for your shadows. So I will do some quick swatches for you all. And before I do the swatches, I do want to quickly compare it to the original Major Dimensions nude palette, or just Major Dimensions palette. I was obsessed with this palette when it first came out. I loved it. I still love it. I think this is the perfect neutral palette, especially if you like neutrals that are not too warm, not too cool, and also not too deep. Like, we've got these deeper tones here, but if you look at this palette as a whole, it is not a really extremely warm and deep palette. Love, love, love everything about it. Now, what I will say is this shade right here is, it's a matte shade with like a shimmer to it. So this is what the shade looks like right there. And then we have this shade right here, which has somewhat of a similar formula. It's a little more creamy. So you've got that shade here and that shade here swatched out on the back of the hand. These shades are nice, but they weren't my favorite. So that's the more tan one and this one. They've got a matte base, but they have a shimmer to it. But on the eye, you really couldn't see the shimmer at all. So these were just 2 additional kind of matte-like shades that you can work with. This palette does not come with either of those formulas, and I'm actually really glad about it because you just have a row of traditional matte shades down here, and then you have your satin and metallic and shimmer shades all across this top row here. And then right here, here's the sleeve that's gonna protect the cream bases, and you've got your cream bases here. So we've got swatches of the cream bases here. So here is this lighter shade, which I think this would look really beautiful. Actually, both of them would look great as lip products. But I love these tones of the cream bases. You've got your nice rosy tone here, and then this deeper chocolate, kind of like a chocolatey mauve tone. And I think they're beautiful. I do use the deepest shade on that for one of the eye looks, so we'll get to see that in action. Now I'm gonna swatch all of the shimmers, and then I'll swatch all of the mattes. Here are all of the swatches of the shimmers. The formula is very smooth and soft, and you do have some fallout with some of these. Hold on, I've got my one on my thumb, so let me go like that. Here we go. So you do get some fallout with some of these because some of them are more metallic and like almost shimmer toppers. So the swatches right here, I know you can't really see them too much because they're more light, but they are more so like shimmer toppers, and you do get the best color payoff from them with using your finger, and you'll see how they look like when I use a brush compared to just using my finger. Whereas these two shades right here definitely do come with more pigmentation. And so these are going to be, I would say, number one, they have more of a base in terms of the color. And they are just, I don't want to say thicker in their formulation, but they're just not a shimmer topper. This shade right here, I love the duochrome shift of it. And that is going to be this shade right here in the palette. It is so pretty. Might be one of my favorite shimmers in the palette. So now let's swatch all of the matte shades. So for the matte shades, this is what we've got right here. Very smooth and buttery. And I'll do my thumb right here so you can see it right there. So here's the lightest shade with my thumb, and then these are all of the other matte shades. Very smooth and, like I said, very buttery, and they blend really well. So here are swatches of the entire palette, and y'all already know, if you know me, this is my type of color scheme. But even though it is my type of color scheme, I still needed to see what do these things look like on the eyes. So let's get into the two eye looks. So you know how I be doing. I forget the order of how I go. So if I forget the order, just follow along on the tutorial. But I wanted to use as many of the shades as I could for this eye look. So I just started off with the lightest shade and worked my way down the matte shades in terms of building up the colors on my eyes. So this lighter shade right here doesn't show up the best against my complexion. It's almost just like my skin tone, but I do like it. And the reason why I like it, let me come over here, is because I feel like this shade right here is more of a, it is a really great blending shade for someone around my complexion, meaning that if I need a shade to blend out the edges, kind of make the whole look cohesive, this is an excellent shade for that. And it doesn't look too cool tone, it doesn't look ashy against my complexion, it works really well. So then I started to build up the transition with this shade right here, beautifully blended onto the eye, and I really like the tone of it. And then I went into the crease and deepened up the crease with these two shades here. And I really do enjoy them. I will say this, putting these two shades next to each other in the crease, I didn't see too much of a distinctive difference between the two. Even though you can see a difference in those two shades when looking at the swatches, so these are the two shades right here. I think on the eye, you don't really see too much of a difference between those two shades. I think, you know, you can wear one or the other. I don't think you'll really notice too much of a difference. And then I smoked out the lower lash line with this shade, and I added it also to the very outer corner of the upper lid. So then getting into the shimmers and the metallics, I wanted to use this shade right here, this duochrome shade or multi-chrome shade. So I initially tried to go in with my brush. It picked up hardly anything. We just saw like little flecks on the eyes. So that's when I went in with my ring finger, and that's when I got the intensity of color that we see here. So like I mentioned before, these, I would say, these three shades right here are going to act more like shimmer toppers if you want to use a brush, but if you want more pigmentation or if you want it to show more, either use your finger or spray your brush, but you need something to kind of pick the shadows up because they're not tightly packed together, or there's not that cream base that we find in these two shimmers right, these two shimmers right here to really keep the flecks together so that you can see them with a brush. So use my finger, and that worked beautifully. And so then I went in with this shade right here, and use my finger again. And oh, that shade, do y'all see her? She is something else. She is something else. So love, love, love that. And then I used this, did I go, what shade did I use? I think I went with this shade for the inner corner, and then I used this shade right here for the lower lash line and a little bit of the inner corner. Y'all, let me tell you, when I was done with this eye look, I said, oh, you something cute. You are really cute. Okay, so then I was like, oh, I cannot wait to get into this next eye look, because something that I want to point out that I love, and I saw it with the first palette, but it wasn't really so apparent with the first palette, but I do think it was more apparent with this palette. You've got these simple one and done looks right here vertically. So here is your matte shade. Here we go. Here's your matte shade. Here's your shimmer to like bring the whole look together, and you're done. And of course, depending on how deep your complexion is, you might not be able to just use this matte shade and just this shimmer. But you could. Then you've got these two as a whole look, these two as a whole look, and these two as a whole look, and these two as a whole look. And so I wanted to kind of show that with this eye look. Now I did use more than 2 shades, but you'll see where I'm going. So first I wanted to go in with a cream product. So I went in with this cream base right here. You do not need a lot, okay? So what you see me putting on my eye is actually way too much, but it blended out beautifully. And so I will say that if you tend to go a little heavy-handed with these cream bases, just blend. And as you can see, it blended really nicely, and it also didn't like run everywhere, which I was really happy with. I love this formulation because it's just tacky enough to where you know it's gonna really hold a metallic or a shimmer on top, but it's not so emollient that like it's bleeding everywhere and now you've got a hot mess of color where you don't want it. So I really, really enjoy his cream base formula. So then I took this shade right here and I began to pack it on with my brush, and you can see that this shade actually does show with the brush. I do think that you would still get more pigmentation from these 2 shades with your finger, but you can use your brush and still get pigmentation. You just have to build it up. So I use that shade right here, and you can see you could use that shade as a one and done type of shade. I smoked the lower lash line out with this shade, and I also added this shade right here to the outer edge of the eye. And then for the inner corner, I wanted to go in with this like fire-like shade. Oh my goodness me. These shimmers, metallics, stunning. Like, do you see that? Do you see the fire on the eyes? Oh, stunning, okay? And then for the lower lash line, I put that same shimmer and we're done. And let me just say, I am so here for this palette. It is beautiful, it is stunning, and I did use every shade in the palette except for this shade right here. And I would have thought about it, I would have put this on my lips because this is basically almost similar to the shade that I have on my lips, but neither here nor there. You know what, why don't we? I'm just gonna add a little on top because I have matte liquid lipsticks. So let's just add a little. There we go. So now we've used every shade in the palette. It's so funny, it looks pretty similar to what I already had, just lighten that lip color up a bit. But I think this palette is stunning. I highly recommend it, especially if you're somebody like me who loves your pinks and your rosies and your mauves. I think this palette is stunning, but I also do think we are going to get way more diversity in this color story than we are from his Major Dimensions nude palette. I'm calling it nude because, you know, I want to distinguish between the two. This palette, I remember when I reviewed it, I was like, you can definitely get different looks with it, and I still believe that you can, but you're going to get more looks and more, if I could say, variation of looks with this palette, just because we've got a little more color in here and the different tones of rose are apparent. I think if you have both, honey, they will complement each other very well. So I think if you wanted Major Dimensions, but let's say you felt like Major Dimensions didn't have the depth that you needed, especially if you have a richer complexions, Rose is here for you. Absolutely. And if rose seems too intimidating, I don't like all this depth, this might be too deep for me, but I want to try a Patrick Ta eyeshadow palette, I say go for this one. I still love this palette. I still use it. I still think it's beautiful. But if I had to choose between the two, I'm definitely going to be picking up rose much more than I am the original palette, simply because I love all of the formulas in this palette. And like I told you, with the original palette, the formula, those two shadows, I could have done without them formula-wise, but I still love the palette as a whole, and I still use it and still very much recommend it. Okay, so I wanted to get into a couple of comparisons. There were a couple of palettes that I was like, yes, I do want to compare the two. Charlotte Holcroft created this video. She had me cracking up, but she was talking about products that we don't need. We already have this makeup. We don't need these new makeup products. And so she was talking about this palette, and she's like, I know we all have this color story in our house already if you like this type of color story. And she mentioned this one palette, and I was like, yes, they could be similar. So Charlotte Tilbury's Pillow Talk Instant Palette. When looking at the two, we can see some similarity, right? So we've got Pillow Talk here, and then Patrick Ta's palette here. I'm sorry, I'm blinding y'all. I'm trying not to blind you all. But we can see some similarity in the matte shades. Now, of course, we're not gonna have those types of shimmers in Charlotte Tilbury's palette because that's just not what she does in these types of palettes, too much. But in terms of the matte shades, there are some similarities, and I feel like the feel is similar. So, right, we don't have the same colors, but I feel like the feel of the matte shades are similar. Now, Patrick Ta is gonna have a more deep shade, whereas the Charlotte Tilbury palette, the deepest shade is going to be here. But I love this palette. It's one of my favorite pink-based palettes. I highly recommend you give it a try. It is a little more expensive. It is $75 compared to Patrick Ta's $68. But I did want to point out the two because when Charlotte mentioned it, I was like, yeah, I do see kind of a comparison with it there. Then I wanted to point out Huda Beauty's Naughty Nude palette. And I feel like we can see some similarity there too. So we've got Huda's Naughty Nude and then Patrick Ta's Rose palette, trying to get both of them in here. And I feel like if you have Naughty Nude, no, you don't have the same shades like identically, but I feel that there is a similar vibe in this palette. Also with this palette, you do have different shimmer textures and tones. So once again, if you have this palette, I'm not gonna say that you don't absolutely need the Patrick Ta one because you have every shade in this one. But let's say you were interested in Patrick Ta's, but you're like, I really don't want to spend the money, so do I kind of have something like that already? I think you could get similar looks from the Naughty Nude palette, especially if you wanted to combine shimmers together and so forth. So I don't think that these two palettes are identical, but I think that they could be in the same family and you could come out with very similar looks if you didn't want to purchase the new Patrick Ta palette. And then the last palette I wanted to compare it to, which this is a very, anyways, let me just show it to you because I can't even think of the words. Okay, so we've got Patrick Ta's, and then we've got Charlotte Tilbury's new Pillow Talk Dreams palette. So let's say you're somebody who's like, I want the feel of Patrick Ta, but I do not use all those shades. I am like a one and done type of eyeshadow person. I might use 2 eyeshadows on a good day. Then I would recommend Charlotte Tilbury's Dreams palette. First of all, I love it. I've done a review on it, and you can see the couple of looks that I created with this palette. And so if this is more your speed in terms of like, I don't like bigger palettes, I want something small, but I like the tones in the Rose palette. Is there one that's similar? I would suggest this one as as one that could give you a similar look. Not an identical look, but a similar look. For instance, looking at the 2 matte shades here, I'll swatch them next to the 2 matte shades in the Patrick Ta palette that I think that they are kind of similar to. So we've got, let me make sure, okay. So we've got this shade here. This is one of the matte shades from Patrick Ta. And this is one of the shades in Charlotte Tilbury's palette. And then here's the other matte shade in Charlotte Tilbury's palette. So you can see between these 2 matte shades, no, you're not getting like the exact same shades between the matte shades here, but they're all kind of in a similar rosy mauve tone of a family. So we've got one of the shimmers from Charlotte Tilbury, and then here's the other shimmer. Sorry, I kind of put that on Patrick Ta shimmer, but you can see that once again, not identical, but a similar-ish vibe. So that's why I suggested the Charlotte Tilbury palette if you just feel like I'm not using all these colors, but I want a similar feel. So let me know your thoughts on this palette. I highly, highly, highly recommend it for all complexions. Of course, if you have a lighter complexion, every one of these shadows are gonna show up, but I am happy that he put these deeper, richer tones in here, this richer base shade, and then also these richer tones here and here, because it will work for people who have a deeper and richer complexions. And then in terms of like the shimmers and the metallic shades, I don't see why any of these won't show up on any complexion. And yeah, I'm totally in love with it. Absolutely, highly recommend it. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think of the two eye looks? Are you interested in this palette? I wanna hear all the things. And if you've made it to this point in the video and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I don't know why y'all don't be subscribing. If I can just, you know, pat myself on the back, but it is your choice and I'm totally okay with that. I'm kind of not, but I'm totally okay with it. But I would like for you to subscribe and join the Glam Girl Squad. And guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my very next video. Bye guys.